So here's the thing. I'm 32, and only in the last 2 years or so have I really started embracing being a woman, having a female body, and paying attention to my physical, my mental wellness from that lens. For most of my life, I was just following very generic advice, right? Eat clean, work out, push through. But a lot of that advice was never really written for women. It was built around male biology, male energy cycles, and a 24-hour rhythm that women don't really operate on. Now, once I started understanding how my own body actually works, how my hormones shift every week, and how that impacts my mood, my energy, my cravings, focus, all of that, things started to change. I started working in sync with my natural hormonal cycle instead of fighting it, and the difference has been insane. So in this video, I want to break down exactly how I use cycle syncing to improve my workouts, my food habits, even work life in a way that is practical, that is realistic, that is not rigid. But first, let's quickly talk about what cycle syncing even is and why it is becoming such a big deal in today's day and age. Now, cycle syncing is essentially the practice of aligning your lifestyle from workouts to food to rest to productivity with the 4 phases of your menstrual cycle. So we have 4 phases: menstrual, which is when you're having your period; follicular, which comes directly after you start menstruating; then ovulation is when your ovaries release the eggs into the fallopian tube; and luteal is the 10-15 days before your period, where your hormones go all haywire. Now, you can just see what each phase is in this diagram right here. Now, each phase brings its own hormonal shifts, which affect your energy, which affect your mood, your focus, even how your body responds to food and exercise. For example, in your ovulation phase, you might feel energized, social around people, right? But then during your luteal phase, you may feel more tired, more introspective, and all of that is completely normal. Now, this approach is becoming popular because more and more women are realizing that traditional health and productivity advice does not always fit our needs. And cycle syncing, in fact, helps us work with our body, our natural rhythm, instead of pushing against it. And that leads to more balance and less burnout. Now, the research on this is kind of all over the place, which is why I feel like a lot of people don't know whether it's effective or not. But one of the things you will find in cycle syncing literature, like all of the research that has been done, is that it does not have a one-size-fits-all approach, right? It depends on you individually. It depends on your bio-individuality. And that is something like that freedom to mold my routine as per my energy needs that has been very, very beneficial for me. And how exactly do I do that? We start with step number 1, which is observing your cycle. Now, if you're like me and you have a history of irregular periods, or you have issues that come up around your periods like acne, bloating, all of that, then figuring out when your follicular phase is and when your luteal phase is can be a tough game, which is why before you start anything, you first need to track your periods for a couple of months. Now, I did this when I initially wanted to start cycle syncing, and ever since then, it's made my life very, very easy. I use the Apple Health app and the cycle tracking feature that is there on the Apple Watch. You can use any app that you want. You can even use Google Calendar, whatever floats your boat. Flow is another great app that works really, really well because it has multiple different parameter tracking options. Essentially, what you'd want to do initially is just mark the start and end of your period dates on whatever app you're using, right? In addition to that, you can also track your mood, your energy levels, your cervical mucus, your sexual activity if you are sexually active, any changes that you feel in your body. For example, around my ovulation, I will get hormonal acne, breast tenderness, and it's almost like clockwork. And I know that my ovulation has started. Then during luteal phase, I will start craving spicy food like crazy. And I will have one day where I have to sit down and just cry, have a good cry, that's it. And then I know that I am in my late luteal phase, too. And then after my period is obviously the follicular phase, but I know it's about to end when my energy starts to dip. Basically, all of these are signs that my body is giving at different stages of the cycle. So when I start getting acne, I know that I'm entering my luteal phase. In a month when that is delayed or absent, I know that my cycle is going to be delayed or absent, and so on. Once you understand how your body responds to different phases of the cycle, you can just tell by your symptoms what phase you are in. Then we come to step number 2, which is not constantly staying in a calorie deficit. Now, this is of course relevant for people who want to lose weight or are trying to lose weight. Right now, I'm on a weight loss journey, and I have done this in the past, not very well, I'll admit. And most traditional literature or most traditional advice tells you that you do like a 6 to 8 week calorie deficit to see some results. But when I have done that in the past, it has almost always impacted my cycle negatively. So if I do a prolonged calorie deficit, it will make my cycle go absent, for instance, right? So now what I started doing is I switched to cutting calories during my follicular phase and my ovulation phases. So right now I'm in my follicular phase and I'm eating in a calorie deficit. And then when I'm in my luteal phase and my menstrual phase, I try and eat at like my maintenance calorie. The reason that this happens is because during your follicular phase, which is the time right after your period, estrogen rises and progesterone, the other hormone that is responsible for your body, is still low. This means that you're more insulin sensitive, so your body uses carbs more efficiently. This also means that your recovery is faster, your mood and your energy are naturally lighter. This is when your body handles calorie deficits and intense workouts the best. It is the optimal time to do your cutting phase. Your body is primed to burn fat without feeling like it is under stress. Then comes the luteal phase, which is right after ovulation leading up to your period, when progesterone, that hormone, is high. And this hormone basically increases your BMR. So you burn slightly more calories every day, like 100 to 300 more calories every day. It also causes higher cravings and higher hungers because you're automatically burning more calories. It also reduces insulin sensitivity and increases inflammation in your body, slows down recovery, makes your body more stress reactive. So if you try to stay in a deficit and if you work out too hard during this phase, you will feel more exhausted, you'll feel more moody, you'll feel like you want to binge more food, right? Plus, the body may also respond by raising your cortisol levels and holding on to fat. So during this phase, I try and eat at maintenance to support hormonal balance and reduce my PMS symptoms. I still try to eat clean, I still train, I still go to the gym, but I do not push like a fat loss zone over here. Even during my menstrual phase, I stay at about maintenance. The body is already under physical strain. There's blood loss, there's inflammation, hormones are getting back into balance. So rest and recovery is essential. This brings me to step number 3, nourishing my body differently during different phases. Now, I'm not gonna lie, my diet is pretty much the same during the entire month, but I'll add a few things to help nourish my body during the hormonal shifts. I also give in to my cravings. I don't just ignore them. So if you're generally eating clean, cravings basically signal what your body might need in that moment. For example, during my luteal phase, I crave spicy, warm foods, and science actually backs this. According to this article, spicy foods stimulate circulation, they release endorphins and dopamine, which explains why a bowl of like spicy ramen will feel like therapy in your luteal phase, right? Then right after my period is when I crave sweet stuff, chocolate especially. And turns out that is because your body needs carbs and energy to replenish itself after your period. So this craving kind of makes sense too. I still try and stay like mindful of what I'm eating, which means enough protein, no matter what phase you're in, enough fiber, salad, fruit every day, and enough water through all the different cycle phases. In addition to this, there's another thing that has helped a lot significantly like over the years, and that is seed cycling, which is where you take flaxseed and pumpkin seed during your follicular phase, which is one tablespoon of each, that's it. So these seeds are rich in omega-3 lignans, which may help support estrogen production and promote healthy estrogen metabolism. And then you have sunflower and sesame seeds, again 1 tablespoon each in your luteal phase. These are rich in zinc, selenium, vitamin E, and that may help boost progesterone levels and reduce PMS symptoms. So I will say that it's important to be mindful of your seed cycling routine and not over-consume these seeds, and also to take a break once every 2 to 3 months or so, because they're very, very high in fats as well, and it's very easy to go over your calorie limit, especially if you're like in a weight loss zone. So just be mindful, and too much of something is never really the greatest thing. So keep that in mind. This brings me to step number 4. I focus on movement that honors my hormones. So the last 2 years, I was pretty heavily into strength training, progressive overload all of the time. And while I did see results in the beginning, by the end of last year, something felt really off. I was exhausted, I was very inflamed, I was bloated, and I had stopped getting my period for 70 days at a stretch. And then my nutritionist told me to kind of chill out. And that is when I decided to opt in for Pilates instead of just going very heavy in my strength journey. I actually took a 2-month break from working out completely, and then I moved into Pilates. Honestly, it feels a lot more aligned with where I am hormonally, especially during the second half of my cycle. So this is what I have practically discovered, that with conditions like PCOS, you already have elevated levels of stress in the body. And if you are not getting proper rest and recovery, and if you continue to train heavy or beyond your body's capacity, it leads to even more stress on the body, and that makes all your hormones go haywire. That is the reason that I saw much better results after switching to something like Pilates, where the workout intensity is much lower, and hence the stress put on the body automatically becomes lower. Now, this is not to say that strength training doesn't work or women or we shouldn't do it. I think we just need to go at it differently if you have hormonal issues. If you're a woman whose cycle is regular, this advice doesn't really apply to you. If you have a regular cycle, if you don't have issues with your periods, cycle syncing will just mean that you alter the intensity of your workouts during the different phases of your cycle. So you go hard and heavy during your follicular phase, during your ovulation phase, and then you slightly take it slow during your luteal phase. For women with hormonal imbalances, we need to equally focus on rest and recovery. It means that if you're working out today, you need to have 8 to 10 hours of sleep, right? If that is not happening, you have to reduce the intensity of your workout. So for me, that was the major cause that my workout was causing more stress and inflammation as opposed to helping me, because my recovery and my nutrition, which is like my protein consumption, was not completely on point. So how I personally do this now is 3 days of Pilates in the week and a day or two of strength training, out of which only one will be relatively heavy. I've still reduced the weight that I was lifting and I will slowly get back to it once my body is ready. I really genuinely love strength training, but I think I have to work in sync with my body as opposed to just going at it blindly and following the advice of every Instagram page that I see online. Now, when it comes to syncing your workouts to your cycle, Pinterest guides or like YouTube videos will tell you that you need to work out light in your luteal and your menstrual phases and heavy in your follicular and ovulation phases, which is kind of what I just said. And people often take this to mean that they can only strength train or do cardio in the follicular phase and then the rest of the times they have to do yoga and Pilates only. Not true. There's a lot of individual variance in this, of course, but more than that, you can work out in whatever way suits you. If you're a dancer, dance. If you're a gym girly, go to the gym. If you do Pilates and yoga, do that. You just need to adjust the intensity of your workout based on your energy levels and the phase of your cycle. So this will mean you do more intense workouts, again, like I said, during your follicular phase, during your ovulation phase, and then you progressively keep lowering the intensity as you get closer to your periods. Now, there's additional research on this. Dr. Stacy Sims, who suggests that you can actually start working out intensely during your menstruation phase itself, which is during when you have your period itself. For me, that is a bit of a stretch. I get cramps on the first day of my period, so no workout then. And then the next 2 days are also kind of like uncomfortable. So I might just go for a walk if I feel like it, but otherwise I'll take it really slow and then I'll resume once my period is over. Now, most cycle syncing advice is kind of limited to the things that we just discussed: mindset, diet, exercise. But what about the way that you work? Productivity burnout, I feel, has as much of an impact on our hormones as it does on our work. And in the last couple of months, I've started to pay more emphasis to this. Now, the fourth thing I do is work in alignment with my hormonal flow and my human design. Human design is something that I've discussed in the last video as well. So if you want like an in-depth explanation, you can go check it out. Now, I know that not everybody has the flexibility to plan their work around their cycle. If you're in a corporate job or if you have a fixed schedule, you probably just can't say, hey, I'm ovulating. Can I present today instead of Thursday? And I get that. But what I've learned is that even if you cannot fully restructure your workload, you can take small steps to manage your energy more mindfully. So maybe that will look like not overbooking your calendar during your luteal phase and scheduling deep solo work for your follicular phase when your focus is sharper, or taking more breaks or like shorter meetings during your period. Simply giving yourself a little bit of grace if you're not feeling as sharp for 1 week and knowing that it's not a personal failing. Even those tiny shifts can make a big difference. I know that having a supportive work environment or supportive family makes this a lot more conducive. But what I'm trying to say here is, even if you can take out a little bit of time for yourself during the periods where your energy is low, you can have a much faster recovery and you can bounce back a lot faster, and it makes a huge difference. Now, because I work for myself, I've been experimenting with how I can align my schedule to feel more in flow without needing every day to be perfect. Firstly, I mark my tentative cycle on my calendar. Since I've been using Apple Health to track my cycle for the last year or so, it has actually gotten very, very accurate at predictions. And that's the benefit of using an app over, physically tracking or tracking your stuff in a calendar. So I use that to put my predictions on the calendar, like this is going to be my follicular phase and this is going to be my luteal phase and this is going to be my menstruation phase. And then here is how I plan the rest of the month. For follicular and ovulation, these are my high energy phases. So I try to batch create content. I will film more videos. I'll record voiceovers. I'll brainstorm scripts. Basically all the outward facing creative stuff I try and get done in my, follicular ovulation phase. And then as the luteal phase comes, I try and slow down. I focus more on back end work, on planning, on reviewing scripts, writing writing or any other work that's more inward and doesn't require constant decision making. And then during my menstrual phase is when I try to protect my calendar. I don't schedule shoots or meetings if I can help it, and I give myself more time to rest or work from bed if that's needed. But I usually start easing back into focus work by day 3 or day 4 of my periods once like my energy levels are back up. And then there's something called human design, which is a self-awareness system that combines astrology, the chakra system, the Qing and quantum physics, all of that jazz. So I haven't gone into the details of how human design came about to be, but what it does is helps you understand how you're energetically wired to make decisions for work and how to interact with the world, like how you energetically interact with the world. I honestly found it super accurate. I'm a generator, which means I thrive when I follow what feels energizing and what feels aligned with what I want to do. So beyond cycle syncing, I've also started leaning into the more intuitive side of things, asking myself if something lights me up, if something excites me. If yes, then I lean into it. If no, I either delay it or do it in a way that feels more doable. And if I can avoid it, I will avoid it. Now, you do not need to copy this exactly. Your lifestyle, your job, your body, it's all going to look different. But the point is to start noticing what kind of work feels easier in each phase for you. When do you feel more drained? When do you feel most in your zone? And once you have that awareness, you can start making subtle shifts that help you align with your energy. Now, if there is one thing that this entire process of cycle syncing has taught me, it's that you do not have to get it right every single time. You just have to stop fighting yourself, your own body, your own energy. Because there are weeks that I still completely mess up, or I will overschedule and I will do more work in the luteal phase than I did in the follicular phase. I will eat junk. But instead of like getting frustrated or spiraling into guilt, I try to pause and reflect back on why this is happening. And that is how I've been using cycle syncing to feel better in my body, to work with more clarity, and to, stop feeling guilty about food and rest. Mind you that none of this has happened overnight. It took patience, it took a lot of failed attempts and a lot of unlearning. So if you're just starting out, or if your cycle still feels very confusing or chaotic, I hope that this video gave you a little bit of clarity to begin with. And if you have PCOS and you want to go deeper into how hormones affect your mood, your metabolism, energy, go ahead, watch this video next. Actually, both of these videos, and I'm gonna see you guys very, very soon in another one. Bye.